So here, no one is really who he looks he is. Like we never really know someone in their complete like complexity. And of course, there are a lot of alliances that are hiding in the background of every frequency signature we come across, even our own. And there is a lot of puppeting due to mind control and all the different threats. So we know that a lot is done to minimize who we are, to constrain us, to restrict us, to sabotage our efforts. And it takes, of course, inner work to break out of the loop of these many loops of programming. There are so many hive mind spaces, and we quickly find ourselves in them. And when we are in them, the impact we can have or that we are having is diminished, and we are generally partially efficiently handled. Now there are darker hive mind spaces than others, and there are some hive mind spaces where you can learn, and observing if your programming is getting triggered. And of course, it always depends how the other person or the other persons are reacting as well. From there, you also know better where to stand. So we know also that it's important not to react to what is engineered in our reality, but it gets very hard, as the distracting component can be really strong. Of course, our wounding of non-recognition is opening a lot of avenues for negative forms of attention, which are so numerous here, and we can easily mistake them for being sincere while they are not. And it's generally a very high percentage because these negative attentions are sent by the computer systems in your life to distract you, to handle you, to lead you to specific situations, to create more drama, and etc., etc. Many beings are programmed to get us into a reactive mode and to get a reaction from us. Some are spirited and some are not. Of course, many different alien factions who don't have our best interests at heart want an easy access to us, and we are more easily accessed when we are allowing some handler to be closer and closer to us. And the dark factions want easy access to all the beings who are connected to the eternal source of creation. Your deepest desires or longing are hijacked, and that's also one of the ways how they kind of create the next engineered trap for you. There are lots of timeline redesigning, and your timeline can be modified to better monitor what you are doing and where you are going with that, with your inner work. Now, sometimes we are attached to other people and the experiences we think we are having with them, but it's often linked to most of the time cabal loyal alters also in others, making us believe we are having an experience, but usually it's quite a big delusion. So in the end, there is nothing to be really sad about or to grieve, because a lot of what we are experiencing is engineered to get a reaction from us. Anything to distract us from our work and what truly matters for us. So the handlers around us will use a lot of love bombing. I mean, love bombing is so efficient here because we're so wounded generally. So we're craving for real appreciation. But due to the programs, it's also rare to really know what true appreciation means. So um, a lot of backdrops are using love bombing, a lot of spirited beings, a lot of spirited beings very tied to AI or very manipulative in their ways. These are the most skilled, and they will trigger your nervous system, your hormonal response, and bring you in that delusional state where you uh, believe in the love bombing that is happening, but there is a hidden agenda. They want something out of you. They are puppeted to say certain things. These are often the people who are giving us the best compliments. But a true compliment is not hooking into your nervous system and your hormonal response. It's not creating these delusional state. And when you receive a true appreciation, it can really, really touch you way deeper than the love bombing, which is deeply manipulative. Now, sometimes you don't even need the love bombing to get triggered into very active programming. Sometimes just a sentence can put you in that obsessive programming. So it's something to pay attention to. These sentence trigger that happen and that can really derail you for an evening where you just get busy getting completely sidetracked about where you were originally going. Basically, how it works is that we project so much of what we want to believe, of what we want to experience, of also what the other person wants us to believe about who they are, and if they don't know themselves good, or if they have chosen to be, if they have not reintegrated enough, if they have made certain choices along the path. um, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to interact with them. Now, sometimes, I mean, when you experience a direct trigger, it's direct, it's quite, it's quite clear. But you have triggers that come way later, so they are not in the moment. They really will unfold later with all your programming. Imagine your programming is a maze. It's gonna click, 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 and take different turns before, it's there is a specific effect that the dark factions want to have on your consciousness, and they know your programming, they have you profiled. So they want to activate some programming and get you sidetracked like this. So it's important to know, and these triggers that are not in the moment are sometimes much more difficult to identify because the way we are feeling them in the body is quite different as well. We have many alters also that are quite delusional, and when they enter the game, it gets really messy to perceive reality. It's really not as it looks to be. So in my upcoming course, Navigating Complex Relationship, Handling and Connecting with Allies, we will talk about engineered relationships that are encouraged by the computer systems. We will review some of the handler templates that I cross paths with. Some of them, it's very easy for the matrix computer system to change a few parameters here and there. and to actually also trigger beings to do certain things, to be at certain place, to seed their dreams, so they will take certain actions. There is a lot of dream seeding also that can lead you to certain places. So a lot of beings around us are sent to trigger certain things. Some are sent to create weirdness. Some are sent to trigger savior programming. And sometimes when you set a boundary, you never hear from them again. We hear all these words, but they really just a lens in the infinity of the landscapes available here, and you quickly change lens as well. So when you re-listen to yourself, maybe you find it interesting how you were perceiving reality through that lens at that moment, and now it has changed a lot. And you know that some of the things you were believing in that moment, you have kind of deepened your understanding about them, and you kind of see through, so you don't believe the story, because there are many different storylines here organized for the spirited beings. They are the macro main game realm world narratives. And you know, there is like, that's what history is, with these controlled narrative being unfolded. In 2020, 2021, we were finding in very restrictive, controlled narratives. I think we did lose our smiles at some point. It got to us maybe. And then we also probably, at least I did, like put a lot of distance, and also learning to put even more distance with the new narratives that are unfolded. And now there are also the micro controlled narratives, because they want, I mean, the gamekeepers and the dark alien faction, who really have interest to keep the control very active here. They really want to micromanage your life, and they don't want you to think freely and to pursue, you know, and to expand, just expand in who you can be here. And there is a lot of engineering meant for you to play a certain role, not the one that you have chosen, but the one that is engineered for you. So that's how also they're gonna rally you to some hive mind spaces where you would be more easily handled. Deprogramming, of course, is endless. There is no end to it. It's just not the work of only one lifetime, but there is a lot of work that can be done in this lifetime, and it continues, of course, after. There is a lot of tight handling in romantical relationships, and of course, if you have a handler partner, it's gonna be much more easier to get easy access to you through them. So, you know, just to upset you, to put you in these really very intense emotional states. So something to pay attention is also, you know, whenever you meet new beings, new persons around you, is to pay attention. What do they really say? Are they saying anything of substance, or is it all just charming? When you share really your deep, you know, your true self, when you're concerned about them, or that you know, maybe your psychic abilities are getting active, and you're sharing some pieces of information, what do they do with it? Do they ignore it? Do they mention it at all? Because if they don't, it's a big red flag. If they're not even able to meet you there, uh, and they pretend they are, this is a big red flag. Usually you are being let known in the very early stages if you pay attention, but do we really want to know? It's hard sometimes when we know. I mean, the dream is collapsing and you're left with just dealing with many aspects here, and sometimes loneliness and recurrent depression, anger. So you're left with all these stuff that are quite muddy, and also sometimes opening your eyes about the nature of this reality is complex. It's always very complex. Um, and you have so many changes happening in what surrounds you and even the people you know. Nothing is guaranteeing that they will stay like this forever. And so that can be something unpredictable also you have to deal with. So all we can do is really to focus on ourselves and be in control of be in mastery of our own life here. Often when you know, there is no going back to not knowing, it stays with you. Sometimes the programming of beings around you can be triggered, and it can trigger a fantasy in them, and then you can merge with that fantasy, and you're not sure it kind of become your own, but you might think it's your fantasy when it's the other person's fantasy that kind of triggered something. There is a romanticization, and of course alters are involved in that. Hive-mind spaces are also greatly used to engineer a lot of traps and distraction. And these are not spaces where you can really break free from the hive mind, right? There is a lot of psychological pressure in these spaces. Usually there are degrees to and percentages about these hive mind spaces. They are not all as dark as each other. They all are. Actually, you can even scan each of these hive mind space with the Energy Remaster app and look at the aura and see what they look like. And you're gonna have so many different colors to them. So the system wants us dependent on other beings who are more easily accessed than us. And of course, because we are memory wiped, it doesn't get easier to remember our progresses and to build on that. That is why going back or recording yourself, or going back several times to think, and even a few months later, even a few years later, is still interesting. You can really remorph your vision like that. And a lot of distraction is engineered so you don't do that. It's encouraged not for you not to do that, because you can observe a lot of things when you do that. So reclaiming our independence is really happening one step after the other, and there is a lot of encouragement and programming, very thick programming, for us to overshare with handlers, contact our handlers for help, because sometimes we don't have much resource, or we have not thought about what kind of resource we can put instead of that handlers who is disguising his handling by pretending they are helping you. So there are many energetic contracts for us to keep on breaking. And it gets also very complex anytime beta sex kitten programming is involved, which is pretty common, that some layers of it is involved in in interactions. And when all these programmings entangle together with savior programming, it's just illusion and many other thread, it gets quite complex because you're dealing with all that programming kicking in and just affecting your perception of reality. So we find ourselves sometimes in these delusional states where all these threads are leading us to really redesign the complete timeline we were on. And we find a lot of fake timeline engineering with mirrored image labyrinth systems. And of course, it does play on your programming. That's why the programming is there. So to guarantee an easier access to you through your whole life. So this lifetime, it's really a lot about projection and deflection and navigating that. These derailment programs are meant for you to be on your weakest timeline, be the weakest version of yourself, be courted to handlers, live with a handler, share space with a handler, just have your handlers really close to you and all around you. It is one big derailment program, and one meeting, especially romantic meeting, can really have a big effect on affecting your timeline, or at least for a while. And we project a lot of who we are and a lot of distortion in the vision when things are getting started. It's not at all like we think it was. And that's why I was mentioning in the beginning that each of us is so much more complex than we look just on the surface. There are so many signatures inside of us that we associate with. There are so many abilities. There is so much disguise as well. So with relationships, it really depends if the shadow of each individual is posing a huge problem in the relationship. Another challenge here is really to be that loving friend for your friends, to appreciate them really for who they are instead of who they are not to fall for that duality, that polarity point of view and angle. And it can be hard to stay connected to that. And there is actually a lot of programming geared towards you not being able to stay in that energy of openness and of like validation of the uniqueness of other beings around you. So when you are changing your focus, when you meet someone new and it's exciting, and you start not to do some of the things maybe you were doing that were good for you, like maybe the routine you had going on, or all the things that are good for you, like caring for your beloved pet, or assisting them in their healing. These are your faithful companions. They will stay with you. These are your real allies. So distraction is gonna distract you away from what is real and truthful in your life. Sex kitten programming is definitely a point of deep access, even if the encounter is not sexual. Beyond the surface, there are many other things happening, and allowance actually also can give access to some of your codes. Now there is also a lot of positive happening in these hive mind spaces, because that's usually like where you can meet some other reals who are also caught into the web of the hive mind and trying to find their way. So you are often being reunited with some beings who can become your lifetime friends. That's how I met a lot of my friends. And of course, maybe around us, there are lots of beings we love that maybe live with a projection. But there was a time where we did too. So it's just different stages and levels in the game. And what matter is really the essence of who we are, though, of course, it's going to be heavy to deal with the projection, especially if it's like a narcissistic template or whoever they have in their life as a partner handlers. You can also find some more complex templates. So there is a time where when you realize you've been played again, I think it's gonna be until the end year. That's why I think many of us are working to become more aware about our core wounds. And it's, of course, easier to cut the trap in the first days when it is being installed, before it settles, before bonding gets too deep. And usually you can maybe come back to your first impression of that person. What was the first impression? Did you feel, oh, maybe I'm not going to answer to this person? Was the sound of their voice maybe bothering you? These are indicators that you are picking up something about the personality, or, what kind of roles they are playing here in the game. Now, the Energy Remaster app is an amazing tool, very useful to, I would say, speed up the work, because you get insights that might have taken you weeks before you notice their signatures, and there it's like a lot of information for you to work with. And sometimes one item in one panel, as we call them, can be enough to really let you know that you are being derailed and that it's not the right path for you. Now, it depends if you listen and how fast you listen, and if you believe what you have in front of your eyes or not, and what you decide to do with it. So what about love and friendship and companionship, the real genuine one? Well, it goes way further. Seduction and attachment, it can be sharp, it can sometimes confront, it elevates you, it is healing, it contributes to the timeline you're building, it witnesses, and it does not ask you to be in your sacrifice programming or your savior programming. These relationships are reciprocal and encouraging. They are supportive of your personal growth. They are allowing that authentic space where there are multiple ways of being and believing and experiencing this reality. A fellow companion, is going to be someone who inspire us to complete ourselves, who is being a witness of our own journey, who choose to walk some of these moments beside us. These allies, they are the one encouraging us to stretch and to reinvent ourselves continuously, and they are not afraid of our growth, or if they are, they're working on it, and they enjoy seeing us activating our potential of who we can be and who we are working on being here in the game. So there are times where we can feel lonely in this game, but I think when we zoom out, it really helps, because we have tried all the different ways of being, simultaneously in other realms we are having many different experiences. So isn't it okay to be lonely for only this one game, or even 10 game, if in hundreds of them we've been making different choice, and often it's even loneliness for a chapter, um, and if there is a longing, there are ways to find companionship. I think the zooming in, zooming out helps a lot. um, I have written some articles about orchestrated relationships, engineered relationships, codependency, narcissistic templates. Some of my articles are a little bit older, some are more recent. I will put them in the description box. And in my upcoming course, Navigating Complex Relationships, Handling and Connecting with Allies, it's going to be a privileged container also to go deeper into some of the specifics. And by specifics, I mean really studying different frequency signatures and how they affect our minds, our choices, how they can derail us and for how long. So it's going to be a very diverse experience. This course will also be available in its evergreen version soon after its end in November. I also made some videos that are useful to go back to, especially if you're dealing with tight handling and feel confused. I go back to them whenever I'm being gaslit. I go back to my gaslighting video, which is very useful. Another video on unconscious handlers, and it's very useful. And I've been writing 2 recent articles about engineer relationships, and also being part of the MK Ultra program. So I will try to put all these links in the description box for you if you want to check them out, or go back to them if you already cross paths with them. There are many layers to the material, and we are memory wiped, so let's not forget how the past ourselves can also assist us in what we are facing currently and what we have learned in the past, and made sure to transcript for our future self is also can be very useful as well.